Here's a number that should terrify you. $1 trillion. That's how much money Americans lost last year. Not to the stock market crashing, not to some global recession, not to some evil corporation stealing it. No, it disappeared slowly, quietly, one bad financial habit at a time. And here's the brutal truth. Most of the people losing that money have no idea it's happening. They check their bank account, they feel like something's off, but they can't quite put their finger on it. They're working the same job. They got a raise last year. So why does it feel like they're falling behind? Because they are. In 2026, the financial landscape in America has shifted in ways that most people haven't caught up to yet. Inflation hit hard. Interest rates have been a roller coaster. And the psychological tricks that banks, retailers, and even apps use on us have become more sophisticated than ever before. So today, we're breaking down the 7 deadliest money mistakes that are quietly keeping you poor in 2026. And I'm not talking about generic advice like stop buying coffee. I'm talking about real, psychological, systemic traps that even smart, educated people fall into every single day. If you recognize yourself in even 2 or 3 of these, this video could genuinely change your financial trajectory. Not just for 2026, but for the rest of your life. Let's get into it. Alright, mistake number 1. And this one is going to sting for a lot of people, because it's one of the most normalized financial disasters in America. Credit cards. Now, I'm not here to tell you that credit cards are evil. Used correctly, they're actually powerful tools. Cashback, travel points, building credit score. Great. But here's where most people go completely off the rails. They carry a balance every single month. According to recent Federal Reserve data, roughly 44% of American credit card holders don't pay their balance in full every month. They pay the minimum. And this is where the math turns absolutely brutal against you. Let me give you a real example. Say you have $5,000 in credit card debt. That's actually below the average American household balance, which is closer to $7,000 to $8,000. Your card has an APR, that's annual percentage rate, of 24%. Which is actually pretty standard in 2026 after the rate environment we've been through. If you only pay the minimum payment each month, usually about 2% of your balance, or around $100, here's what happens. You will spend over 6 years paying off that $5,000. And by the time it's done, you'll have paid over $3,700 in interest alone, on top of the original $5,000. That's not a loan. That's a trap with a rewards program attached. And here's the psychological trick credit card companies use. They make the minimum payment feel responsible. Like you're handling your business. You got the bill. You paid something. You're not ignoring it. But what you're actually doing is feeding a machine that is specifically designed to keep you in debt as long as possible. The fix? Simple in theory, hard in practice. Pay more than the minimum. Ideally, the full balance every month. If you can't do that right now, use the avalanche method. List all your debts by interest rate, highest to lowest, and throw every extra dollar at the highest rate debt first, while making minimums on everything else. It's not glamorous, but in 2026, with rates where they are, getting out of high-interest debt is the highest guaranteed return you can get anywhere. Okay, mistake number 2. And this one is sneaky, because it doesn't feel like a mistake when it's happening. It actually feels like success. You get a promotion. Nice. You start making more money. You upgrade your apartment. You get a newer car. You start eating out more. You upgrade your phone. You add a few more streaming services. You join that gym you've always wanted. Each individual decision makes total sense. You worked hard. You deserve better things. And that's true, you do. But here's what happens at the macro level. Your expenses expand to match or exceed your income. Every raise you get gets instantly absorbed by a higher standard of living. And your actual net worth, your savings, your investments, they barely move. Economists and behavioral finance researchers call this the hedonic treadmill. The idea is that humans are wired to adapt to new standards of living extremely quickly. That new car feels amazing for 3 months. Then it's just your car. That upgraded apartment felt luxurious. Now it's just where you live. So you need the next upgrade and the next one just to maintain the same feeling. Here's a real-world number to make this concrete. Let's say you make $60,000 a year and you get a 10% raise. That's $6,000 more per year, or $500 a month extra. If you lifestyle inflate and spend all of it, that raise literally means nothing to your wealth. Zero. But if you funnel even half of it, $250 a month, into an index fund or retirement account averaging 8% returns, in 20 years, that's over $148,000. The rule I like, and this is something financial advisors have recommended for decades, is this: every time you get a raise, live as if you didn't, at least for 60 to 90 days. Give yourself time to actually feel the extra money before you commit to new expenses. Then, if you decide to upgrade something, do it deliberately, not just because you suddenly can. Number 3. And this one genuinely makes me frustrated because it's so common and so quietly devastating. You're saving money. Every month, you put money in your savings account. You feel responsible. You feel like you're doing the right thing. But here's the problem. If your savings account is giving you 0.5% interest, which is what most big traditional banks like Chase, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo were offering for years, and inflation is running at 3 to 4%, you're not saving money. You're losing it. In real terms, in terms of what that money can actually buy you, your savings are shrinking every single year. That $10,000 sitting in a big bank savings account, in 1 year, adjusted for inflation, it has the purchasing power of roughly $9,700. In 5 years, it's closer to $8,500 in today's money. Now, the good news is this one has a clear solution that's been available for a few years now, and most people still haven't taken advantage of it. High-yield savings accounts, or HYSAs. Online banks like Marcus by Goldman Sachs, Ally, SoFi, or American Express Savings have been offering rates anywhere from 4% to 5% APY in the current rate environment. That's 10 times what the big traditional banks are paying. Same FDIC protection, same accessibility, just dramatically better returns on money you were already saving anyway. If you have an emergency fund sitting in a Chase or Bank of America savings account right now, this is one of the easiest financial wins you can make today. Open a high-yield savings account, move your emergency fund there, and your money starts working instead of slowly evaporating. Okay, mistake number 4. This one requires some honesty and maybe a little self-reflection. Have you ever bought something you didn't need, not because you wanted the thing, but because you were stressed, or bored, or sad, or you'd had a rough week and you just wanted to feel better? That's emotional spending. And in 2026, with the infrastructure that exists to facilitate it, one-click Amazon orders, TikTok Shop, Instagram shopping feature, same-day delivery, it has never been easier to act on that impulse before your rational brain can stop you. Behavioral economists have a term for this. They call it retail therapy. And while there's actual short-term neurological relief that comes from making a purchase, a brief dopamine hit, the relief is temporary, and it comes with a financial and often emotional hangover. The research on this is pretty striking. A study from the University of Michigan found that people who shop when they're feeling sad or stressed tend to spend significantly more than people who shop in neutral emotional states, not just on the item they needed, but on adjacent items, upgrades, and impulse buys they didn't plan for. And the cycle is vicious. You feel bad. You spend. You feel briefly better. Then you see the bill. You feel bad again. You spend again. Here are 2 tools that actually work against this. First, the 48-hour rule. Before you buy anything non-essential over $50, you wait 48 hours. Just close the tab. If you still want it in 48 hours, buy it. You'll find that a shocking percentage of the time, the urge has completely passed. The feeling that created the desire is gone. You were never shopping for the item. You were shopping for a feeling. Second tool, check your emotional state before you open a shopping app. Sounds simple, almost silly, but it works. Ask yourself, am I tired? Stressed? Had a rough day? If the answer is yes, close the app. Handle the emotion a different way. Exercise, call a friend, take a walk. Then shop tomorrow. All right, mistake number 5. And this is the one that probably costs Americans more long-term wealth than than almost anything else on this list. Not because of what people do, but because of what they don't do. They don't invest because it feels too risky. And look, I understand the psychology here. The market has been volatile. You've seen headlines about crashes. You've heard stories about people losing everything. It feels safer to just keep your money in cash where you can see it. But here's the math that changes everything. The S&P 500, which is just the 500 largest companies in America, has averaged roughly 10% annual returns over the last century. Not every year. Some years it drops. Some years it crashes hard. But over time, over decades, it averages out to around 10%. That means money invested in a basic index fund, which is literally just you owning tiny pieces of all 500 biggest American companies, doubles roughly every 7 years, following the rule of 72. And the most important ingredient isn't picking the right stock. It's not timing the market. It's time in the market. Starting early. Letting compound interest do its thing. A 25-year-old who invests $300 a month until their 65 to 40 years of investing, at 8% average returns, ends up with over $1 million. Not because they're a genius investor. Because they started and they didn't stop. Now, what if you're starting late? What if you're 35 or 40? You still have time. The math is less dramatic, but still powerful. The worst thing you can do is let the fear of starting late become an excuse to not start at all. The simplest entry point for someone who has never invested. A low-cost index fund ETF, Vanguard's VOO, or Fidelity's F0X are popular options. No individual stock picking required. No financial degree needed. You buy the fund. You're owning the whole market. That's the foundation. Mistake number 6. And this might be the most foundational one on this entire list. Most Americans have no real idea where their money goes every month. I know that sounds harsh, but a 2024 survey found that only about 32% of Americans maintain a detailed monthly budget. That means nearly 7 out of 10 people are essentially flying blind with their finances, making decisions based on a rough feeling of whether they have money or not, rather than actual data. And here's why this matters beyond just know your numbers. When you don't track your spending, you consistently underestimate it. This is called the underestimation bias in behavioral economics. People routinely guess their monthly food spend is $400 when it's actually $700. They think their subscriptions are $50 a month. Their bank statement says $180. And subscription creep is real. Netflix, Hulu, Disney+, Spotify, Amazon Prime, some fitness app, some productivity app, maybe a meal kit service, iCloud storage, maybe a couple of apps you forgot you downloaded 2 years ago that are still billing you $9.99 a month. It adds up to hundreds of dollars a month for services you either barely use or completely forgot about. The fix here is a monthly money audit. Once a month, I literally recommend setting a calendar reminder. You go through your bank and credit card statements line by line. Categorize everything. Identify anything you don't recognize. Cancel what you don't use. Then, going forward, use either a budgeting app like a NAB, You Need a Budget, or Mint's replacement services, or even just a simple Google Sheet to track your income and expenses every month. You don't need a complicated system. You just need awareness. Because you can't change what you don't measure. And we've arrived at mistake number 7, the one that, when it hits you, doesn't just hurt financially. It can unravel every other good financial decision you've made. No emergency fund. A recent Bankrate survey, and this has been consistent data for years, found that nearly 60% of Americans couldn't cover an unexpected $1,000 expense without going into debt or borrowing money. In a country with median household income over $70,000, that is an extraordinary financial vulnerability. And here's why it's so destructive. When an emergency hits and you have no cash cushion, you have 3 options, none of them good. You use a credit card at 24% interest. You take out a personal loan. Or you dip into your investments. potentially selling at the worst possible time and triggering tax consequences. The emergency fund exists specifically to prevent that chain reaction. It's not an investment. It's not supposed to grow. It's insurance. It's the financial equivalent of a fire extinguisher in your house. You hope you never need it, but when the kitchen catches fire, you're really glad it's there. The standard recommendation is 3 to 6 months of living expenses. If your monthly expenses are $3,500, you need between $10,500 and $21,000 in liquid, accessible savings. That's not a suggestion. That's a minimum viable financial safety net. Building it doesn't have to be overwhelming. If you're starting from zero, your only goal for the first 6 months is to get to $1,000. That's the first milestone. It doesn't fix everything, but it puts a buffer between you and credit card debt for a lot of common emergencies: a car repair, a medical copay, a sudden utility bill. Then every month you add to it. Automate the transfer if you can. Treat it like a bill. You don't decide each month whether to pay your rent. You don't decide each month whether to save for emergencies. It just happens, automatically, until the fund is fully stocked. All right, let's do a quick recap, because if you've made it this far, you deserve the cheat sheet. Mistake 1. Paying only the minimum on credit cards. You're feeding a machine designed to trap you in debt. Mistake 2. Lifestyle inflation. Every raise you get disappears into a higher standard of living, and your wealth goes nowhere. Mistake 3. Parking savings in low-yield traditional bank accounts. Inflation is quietly eating your money alive. Mistake 4. Emotional spending. You're shopping for feelings, not products, and the bill is very real. Mistake 5. Not investing because it feels risky. Sitting in cash is actually the riskiest long-term move you can make. Mistake 6. Having no budget. You can't fix what you don't measure, and most people are massively underestimating their spending. Mistake 7. No emergency fund. Without it, one bad day can unravel years of financial progress. Here's the thing about these 7 mistakes. Not one of them requires genius. Not one of them requires a 6-figure salary to fix. They require awareness and intention. They require you to look at your financial life clearly, without excuses, and make slightly different decisions. The gap between people who build wealth and people who don't, at most income levels, isn't intelligence. It's habits. It's systems. It's saying, I'm going to handle my money like it matters, because it does. 2026 is not a forgiving financial environment. Costs are high. Rates are high. And the psychological infrastructure designed to separate you from your money has never been more sophisticated. But here's what's also true. The information to protect yourself has also never been more available. The tools exist. The strategies work. And the people winning financially in 2026 aren't doing anything magical. They're just avoiding the mistakes we talked about today consistently over time. You're already ahead of most people just by watching this. Now, if you want to stay ahead of the financial curve in 2026, join the One Moon family by hitting that subscribe button. Every week, we break down the financial systems, habits, and strategies that actually move the needle. No fluff, no get-rich-quick nonsense. Just clear, honest financial storytelling for people who are serious about building wealth. And if this video helped you, or if you know someone who's making one of these mistakes, share it with them. Sometimes the best thing a friend can do for another friend is send them a 20-minute video that might change how they see their money. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.